So at first, this is something you're just getting exposed to. You're like, what is this? What does it have to do with Street Fighter, Zaf? You're doing that weird shit again, Zaf. I don't know what you're doing, man. What are you doing, bro? You're on some freaking tinfoil hats, man, and you're talking about government. You're weird, bro. You're weird, man. Yeah, trust me. I know. But I got you. I promise. All right, so let's get this show on the road, all right, gang? Today's discussion will be pertaining to why getting better can make you worse. It's very frustrating. We all go through it, regardless of your rank, regardless of your expertise. It happens. It's a natural part of the growing journey. All right, let's kick back, relax, everybody wiggle your toes, and let's get this show on the road. Sounds good? Cool beans. You ever practice a combo and then it's like you forget how to play the game? Doesn't make any sense. I'm practicing this thing to get better, but then all of a sudden you're starting to see other areas of your play suffering. Starts to take a dip in quality. That is known as Goodhart's law. This is a law if you are familiar with like economists and stuff like that. I forgot his first name, but Goodhart is an economist. He's a British economist studying the economy. Is essentially like just being aware of like, you know, finances, the market direction and stuff like that. It's a whole bunch of financial jargon that I don't really care to get into, but that's basically what they do. They study like direction of markets and things like that. So he has this concept, all right? It's a really dope concept, and I'm gonna share it on the screen. And Goodhart's law is when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So essentially what this principle is like highlighting is that any sort of metric that you use for progress, it could get manipulated or distorted when it becomes the actual target instead. You understand? So it's supposed to be a ruler that we're using to gauge our direction, but the problem becomes when you get so enamored by the measurement itself that it becomes the goal. It becomes the ends to a mean instead of a means to the end. It's supposed to be a bridge across to where your destination is. But if it becomes the destination, that is not good for a myriad of reasons. Okay, we'll talk about that down the road. Here are some good examples of this. So let's say you had a company, and if you were to measure people on the number of nails that were made, then you might get 1,000, couple thousand tiny nails, right? But does that mean your business is successful? No, because it's what you do with the nails that matters, right? The nails are supposed to be the means to the end. You understand? They're the product that you would use to then maybe, you know, make your sales, boost revenue. And that is how your company would grow, become more successful. It's not the nails itself. It's not the product itself. You understand? Here's another example. If the weight of the nails made, if that's what you judged your employees based off of that, okay, you'd have maybe a few giant but very heavy nails. Cool. Are you successful? No, that's not the point of this. Again, it's not the product. It's not what is the short term, especially. There's a long term thing. And so you lose focus on what the direction of the company is, and then things get fuzzy. They lose clarity. And losing clarity, it's very easy to get lost and move in the wrong direction, right? So you can have a ladder of success, but if it's going up the wrong wall, all you're going to learn when you get to the end of it is that you went up the wrong wall. You know what I'm saying? You had the wrong approach. You were heading in the wrong direction towards the wrong destination. And that's very frustrating because that's a lot of time that you've basically invested, you know? And so that's something that you have to be very mindful and deliberate about, is how you invest your energy, which is finite. Every single day, you only have so much energy until you rest, right? And then you only have so much time in this existence. And because of that, it's very crucial to your efficiency and your effectiveness to master and maximize your input, right? In order to strengthen your output. So strengthening your input will determine how much greater your output is. Okay, so let's talk about it in a Street Fighter lens. So what this could basically look like is like you're trying to forcefully implement something that you learned. So let's say you're in training mode, you're learning a new character, you're learning a new concept. Let's say you want to learn this particular Footsie's element that you studied in the Footsie's hand guide. Shout outs to my Footsie's hand guide series. If you guys haven't watched it, go watch that. Now let's say you go and take this into the jungles of ranked. And so now you are gauging your progress or your, I guess, value as a player or whatever. You're basing it off of this thing. You're like, okay, I need to force this. I need to force this. I need to force this. But the thing is, you got to remember, this is just one aspect of your whole company, aka you as a player, your skill set. You understand? Your company, aka you, can specialize in one thing, or you could be dynamic and you can be really strong at a lot of things. And the better you are at many things as a fighting game player, then you'll be able to stabilize, because you'll be more prepared to meet whatever challenges confront you on your journey in competitions or in ranked, in battle hub, whatever challenges you meet, you'll be more equipped to solve and handle them. And so here's a very common one. You go from using winning as a metric of progress to it being the sole metric. That's something a lot of us do. I've been very guilty of it myself, where winning is supposed to show, okay, this is the trajectory I'm on because I'm winning a little bit more, or how you're winning, or even how you're losing. You can tell that, you know, you're charting in the right direction. But the problem is, if instead of it being a measurement of progress, you use it as the sole determining factor whether or not you're successful or not, that is when you're going to implode. You can burn out. You start to get decision fatigue. Everything matters. Everything's more critical. You start to play like a perfectionist. All of this stuff, I tell you, because I've done it. I don't like teaching shit that I don't understand, and I only understand stuff that I have direct experience with. Make sense? So when winning becomes a goal entirely. And then here's a very popular one. Here's a very, very popular one where we hear people even in my chat talking about this from time to time, where your rank becomes a metric of value instead of a measurement of progress. See? So now you lose sight of what these things originally are best leveraged for, and now they become the goal. And now because they become the goal, you start to focus on things that are not really within your control. Because out of desperation, you want to guarantee a specific result because that's the goal. And so you say, well, I want to be 1800 MR. That's the goal. Okay, but what is it supposed to represent is a better question. What does 1800 MR represent? Oh, it represents that I'm more stable as a player. Okay, so you know you could be more stable as a player and still not be 1800 MR, right? You know that you can have stronger execution and work on things that you need to work on without it being directly reflected in your MR. Your MR is just, again, a measurement. It doesn't paint the whole picture. The problem is when it becomes the goal, it is the picture, it's the canvas, it's the details, it's everything. You understand? You have to be very, very careful because this naturally happens. What happens as a human, you have your ego, and our ego, what it wants to do is it likes to extend itself onto things. Think of it like a branch. It's just like it likes to extend itself onto things, and so that way it can maintain life form. So your results, it starts to extend itself onto that thing, and now your results become who you are. You understand? That's what your ego does. When in reality, your results are just an extension of you. It's not who you are. It's a branch on a tree. The real weight is in you as a person, the interior. It's not in the exterior. It's not in what the world sees. It's in what's upstairs first, because everything has to be created twice. It has to be created up here, and then it's created out here in the physical. Understand? So this metric, right, it becomes the primary goal, and then you have like individuals and systems that focus entirely on achieving that one thing. So much so that they sabotage more meaningful long-term things just because things got so distorted that this result became the sole focus. You understand? And so if you're not careful with that metric can just sabotage a lot of your progress. It's happened to me where I'd be progressing, and then all of a sudden, and I don't even realize why. It's because my focus changed. I got distracted. I all of a sudden, instead of using the wins as like a metric, again, I emphasize this. I have to keep saying this. I have to say this over and over again, so it's drilled into your mind. Instead of me using these things for leverage as a metric of my progress, it became the sole goal. And then I would get frustrated. Anytime the results contradicted what I wanted or my expectations, I would get frustrated. I would get so irritated. Any little mistake, anything that like it just was not in my control that was affecting the match. And mind you, something that the opponent didn't intend, right? Like they can't manipulate my inputs, but rollback can. Drive rush can, and then you lose off of an interaction, and then like your attitude at that moment, it can just fluster you, and then the rest of the round it spirals out of control. It's all a matter of perception. And so this mental trap is a natural thing. You always want to be very considerate of the fact that as a human, you're susceptible to this type, where you can get distracted, especially in a world where we're just bombarded with information on the daily, so much so that it becomes increasingly difficult to pinpoint what exactly is your voice. Sometimes you think a thought is yours and it's not really your thought. Companies spend billions of dollars a year on marketing research just to learn techniques and accurately influence target audiences. They spend so much money on just seeing the influence of a color on a billboard and things of that nature, you know. So like awareness, if you're not aware, this type of stuff will happen. It's a natural part of life, so you don't have to beat yourself up. This is something that everybody is susceptible to. Of course, strengthening your awareness and things like that will help you be able to keep enough space, a pocket of space where you can differentiate who is who and what is what when it comes to the inventory in your mind. And so let's talk about in-game examples. Okay, so we have combos. So a player is so focused on perfecting their combos in training mode, they're drilling it over and over again, and they spent countless amount of hours doing so. But now they've neglected other arguably more important aspects of Street Fighter. It could be like your spacing, other fundamental components like your footsies game, spatial recognition, adapting to your opponents, asking the right questions in a strategic development, all sorts of stuff. But you get so tunnel visioned on one aspect of the game that you don't realize that there are other deficiencies that you can use, other holes that you can plug in your Street Fighter play that'll help you be able to stay afloat and be able to sail across towards the island of success. Shout outs to Chris F. He had this cool little analogy. The boat I saw the other day was pretty dope. And so here's another one. So let's talk about ranked points. Players will obsess over winning matches so they can climb rank. And what ends up happening is that you might sabotage, again, your long-term growth, and instead you play overly safe or you play super gimmicky. Very one-dimensional tunnel visioning on the things that have worked in the past, not on what can work in the moment. Now you're sabotaging your long-term improvement. And now you have these things as a crutch. So being overly safe, trying to force footsies, trying to be super aggressive, and just being rigid, it doesn't matter what style, but being rigid, ideally, is what will harm you in the long term. You're going to run into an opponent who is more dynamic and strong as you at your particular strength, but they have way more depth to their play. They can overwhelm you very easily. We saw it happen at Capcom Cup with certain matchups. Certain players, they met certain players in bracket and they got overwhelmed because the other player was able to play their game, but then also introduce so much more dimensions and angles of attack and pacing and rhythm and shifts like that, to where the player just couldn't keep up. They looked like a shell of themselves. But it wasn't that they were a shell of themselves, it's just that their room for improvement got exposed, which is a good thing, because then now they know what to work on, if they're aware of it, of course. Here's a great one. Frame data obsession. So again, long term, you're saying, I want to get better, I want to do these things, I want to improve, be strong and blah 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 blah. But if you're too, let's say, anal about frame data, you become so rigid that you play by the numbers, and then you don't have the flexibility to be dynamic, to be able to play off of instincts, and to essentially fortify your intuition. Your intuition is a muscle, so if you neglect it for logic all the time, you're doing a disservice to your unique gifts. So sometimes you do have to just fall on your face because you had a read, you thought you had a read. And once you do that over and over again, you can fortify that instinct. And then in high pressure situations where logic gets thrown out of the window for both players, the player with the stronger instincts wins. You don't need to rely on instincts when you can just run through pools, right? You don't really need that. It's once you get into the higher echelon, when both players understand the rules and we both need to figure out how we're going to break it in a way that it favors us. Fixating on one thing, it just causes you to, by over optimizing, like just constantly working on the same thing and just ignoring everything else and making this the sole goal, you just become very rigid, predictable in your play. You become overly reliant on specific strategies, or you become heavily reliant on specific results to give you the confidence to feel like you're a good player. You shouldn't rely on results to think you're a good player. That's very difficult for you to believe if there are gaps in your belief system that tell you otherwise. Those contradictions, it feels like you're fighting yourself when you try to insert these type of positive beliefs into your philosophy that's riddled with contradictions and things like that. So it's something you have to investigate. You have to investigate, what is your belief system? Because that's the thing that's probably contributing to you becoming fixated on the measurement becoming the target. So what is it that is causing you to do that? You know, for me, it was like, well, ultimately my goal was to win, but why did you want to win? So one thing that you could do whenever you want to like investigate what this is, you ask yourself, what's the goal of the goal? Because if you ask yourself that, you kind of snap out of it and say, oh, my goal is to win today, but what's the goal of winning? And then you're like, oh, it's kind of awkward, because you're either going to reveal that you were focusing on the wrong thing or that you were completely neglecting the right one. This could, I guess, both be the same thing. So you got to remember that real matches, when we play in bracket, we play in ranked, we play in lounges, those are real games. It's dynamic. There's a lot of X factors and variables you can't really account for, because players are playing with their own approach, their own philosophy, their own pacing, their own rhythm, their own intention, their own confidence or lack thereof, their own execution or lack thereof. So there's a lot of weird things that can happen. Like, how many times do you know that somebody goes to do something, they accidentally do something, and it punishes something that they didn't even intend to punish? That's a part of the game. Luck happens. And so the person that is the most prepared is the one that can be favored by luck when it does appear. And so you can't really like force the luck, obviously, right? Because that's something that just kind of happens spontaneously. But the idea is you have the right type of mindset, the right type of like flexibility, so that when these opportunities pop up that you're not accounting for, you're quickly able to pivot instead of clinging on to your comfort zone of playing a certain way. I just want to play footsies. Ah! So being too stuck in a style is one of those things. So this is a trap, essentially, right? So let's talk about like why do gamers in particular fall into this trap? It's not just fighting game players, it's anybody competitive, especially. Ideally, what happens is the allure of the measurements, right? Whatever the measurable progress is, that's happening in your matches. It gives you like a false sense of improvement, if again it's the goal. So again, then you start to attach yourself to the results, and then what happens when you do that but then you don't get the results? All of your confidence is built on a shaky foundation. So that is why you don't really want to do that, because you can't win all the time. You can't win all the time. You can't win every situation, and you know that. Everybody knows that. We all know that conscientiously. It's just once we become unconscious and then our old habits come to the surface because of emotions filter our perception of events, and then we impulsively act on that. And that impulse is something that has been strengthened over and over again from years and years of prior behaviors and instances and events. And so because like measurable progress is so tangible, it's given more value, especially because humans, we're tribal by nature. And so we naturally want to be amongst like-minded people and things like that. We want to have social validation. It's just a natural human instinct for survival. Otherwise, you'll feel shame and exile, which is, you know, something that can bring about a lot of stress, mental stress, right? And mental stress is obviously very detrimental to good health physiologically, because it can trigger all sorts of crazy shit in your body. So it's natural to place emphasis on these things, on the results and things like that, that are measurements, that are tangible. Because the thing is, the real long-term results that you should be striving for, they're not as sexy. You don't really see it as easily. It's not something you can really talk about. Yeah, man, my footsies got so good. Yeah, but are you winning? That's like the conversation with most people, right? If you were to tell them, yeah, but I'm getting a lot better and I'm doing this and you know, and they're like, yeah, bro, you're not winning. Because on the surface, they don't care enough about your particular craft, so they're not going to go in depth with it. They just want to see the black and white results, something that they can easily just see. Oh, are you doing good or are you doing bad? Are you winning or are you losing? So that would be like one of the reasons why we'll fall into this trap. And then another thing is like the cognitive biases. You have your confirmation bias, like, why would I be doing this thing if it didn't benefit me? I wouldn't be doing this thing if it didn't benefit me. That doesn't make sense. And so you obviously are going to keep doing this thing. But the thing is, a lot of people, we do not like to admit that the way we went about things is wrong, because it's very easy, if you're not careful, to, again, the measurement becomes the result or the metric of value, and you say, oh, I was wrong, I am a wrong person, oh my god, I just don't know, and then you start to self-implode instead of just simply being like, I was doing this wrong, okay, I'll just do it better. But there's the little buffer in between your perception that causes you to then say, oh, I was doing this wrong, man, and then you just start to doom. You become a doomer. That's what happens. And of course, there's the sunk cost fallacy, which goes into this, where it's like the amount of time that you've invested things like that, you know, and you say, oh, this was wrong, there's a better way to do this, but what if there's a better way to do the thing that I'm about to do? Instead of doing this, why don't I find the other thing? And then you get analysis paralysis and you don't do anything. That's another thing that can happen. That can throw off your progress, things like that. So how do we avoid this? Right, we're aware of it. Well, how do we solve this? How do we solve this? Okay, I'm gonna tell you how we solve this. Okay, so you gotta have balanced practice. All right, what that looks like is it's not just practicing combos. It's within training mode. What are the different things you can do? You can do drills, exercises with anti-airs, with punishing, hit confirms, movement training, spatial recognition. There's so many things that you can do. Punish training, right? So many things, so many opportunities to learn just within training mode. Ranked, if you go into ranked, rigid, win or lose, very rigid. Instead, practice strategies, practice learning, practice adapting, practice recognizing the opponent's playstyle, practice recognizing their shift of playstyles. You see what I'm saying? So there's so much more that you can do with this experience that you are not doing because you are rigid. And so you have to take the action. You have to go and do it, and you have to teach yourself, oh wow, there is a lot of benefit to doing this. Because you're in a comfort bubble with the way you train and the way you play. If you keep doing something over and over again cyclically, you don't want to interrupt that. That doesn't make sense, because it's the path of least resistance. There's less decision fatigue if I just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Change is not a comfortable feeling until you learn how to get comfortable with it. And the only way you can do that is through action. You can't sit there and just think about it. No, you have to do it. To a degree, you can think about it because it can shift your brain neurologically speaking, because it can't really tell the difference between imagination and actual experiences. But eventually you have to take inspired action, tangible physical steps towards the thing. So that way you can get, you know, not just your mind, but your body connected to the thing, emotionally get connected to the thing. And then you could really start to believe in the change that's transpiring. A lot of people don't believe they can change because they don't know how to change what they believe. It's as simple as that. It's a project that exists on so many fronts. It's not something that you just do with one way. Again, there's different ways to tackle that type of subject. So now let's talk about goal setting. So instead of having these short-term goals, okay, have long-term goals and then have short-term goals that lead up to the long-term goals. All right, but don't make it so that the goals are black and white. Make it so that the goals are something that can express some sort of specificity. So if I am aspiring to make it out of pools, I go and look at the players that are making it out of pools. What are the skill sets that they have? What are the attitudes that they have? The mindset that they have, the training, the habits that they have at tournaments, leading up to tournaments, when they're home training. What are they doing? And then you try to recreate that in a way that makes sense to you, right? And through your own direct experience, you'll be able to just kind of fine tune it. Boom. Don't just aim for high ranks. Don't just aim for winning, but like specific things, tangible things. But it's not necessarily something that's completely outside of your control. Like, regardless if I get shitted on by a player, I can still control my movement. I can still control my meter management to a degree, you know? So those are the parts of the game you want to work on. So then when you handle that, you can then work on the other half, which is like, all right, they're influencing of that situation. How do I circumvent that? We should always start with you first. And then you graduate and go towards the interdependency aspect of fighting games, which is me and you. This dance between me and you. But always start with self first. So some other examples. You want to strengthen your decision making? Okay, it's not just black and white as DP, not DP. It can be, do I invest the meter here? Do I walk up here? Do I backdash here? Do I take the throw here? Those are the types of things that will sharpen you as a player. And then your fighting game acumen will significantly increase. You'll be able to see situations unfold like in real time, all off this crazy instinct that you've built through harnessing this skill set deliberately, not accidentally, by doing it deliberately. You go take with punishing, go work on your spacing, your pacing, or spatial awareness, ranges of your buttons, space traps, things of that nature, interrupts. There's so many skills within that realm. Again, you set these broad goals and then the steps leading up to it that will help you become more stable. Lastly, review your matches. You gotta review your matches. Watching your matches is an objective way of getting feedback, because we're not going to rely on memory. I'm not going to rely on my memory, which can fool me and then play me into thinking something happened that didn't happen. Me thinking I did something that didn't happen. Thinking I didn't do something, but it did happen. That's why you want to watch your replays. It's hard for people to watch replays, mainly because they don't want to relive the loss. And if you feel that, that's a red flag that you probably are using winning as the goal instead of as a measurement. You understand? Because even if you lose, you can still find victories within the loss. But that only happens if it's a measurement. You could say, okay, I lost the match, but I saw that I was winning here. I didn't burn myself out. I was doing really well with my anti-airs. I just walked up, got hit a couple times. That's where I can fine tune my play. You understand? That's a healthy conversation. And now that's going to make you way more stable as a player. And then also it's just going to reinforce having a much healthier mindset about losing and things of that nature. Right? So it's like a rising tide lifts all ships. You lift an area like that when it comes to your mindset, and then everything else is going to be a lot easier. We even have like real world examples of players that do this exceptionally well. In terms of legacy players, Daigo and Tokido, who have dominated across different franchises. Guilty Gear, Tokido played Tekken at one point. So you see these players that are doing really well at multiple games because they're just able to maintain flexibility. New generation legends, Punk, Sonic Fox, they do the same thing. They are the best when it comes to learning new games because they're just so flexible. They learn the game for what it is, and then they insert their style of play into the game. So that type of flexibility, you can even see it at like that type of a macro level with player success when it comes to learning titles, competing in different franchises and things like that. So flexibility is really, really important. And it's not to say you can't be unique, you know, it's just you learn the game first and then you add your uniqueness over time. So if I were to like TLDR all of this, essentially this law is just a reminder that if you put too much emphasis on one metric, it can hurt you and your overall growth, because it's very easy to make that metric the goal, and then all of your sense of value in terms of your progression is rooted off of this thing that you can't really directly control, or in the long run it's not really meant to be the defining factor of whether or not you're succeeding or not. So it's something that you have to be very, very mindful of inside of the game and outside of the game. It can happen in relationships, it can happen with businesses, it can happen with communities, competitions, all sorts of stuff. And so just remember that balance and adaptability are key to your long-term progression, and any sort of improvement that you make is going to be possible through self-awareness. And that self-awareness is of just being able to recognize if your own thinking is the cause of this self-imposed progression block. If you're aware of that, then you can make a choice. And so next time you're in training mode, I want you guys to sit there, think really, really hard. You know, I want to get better, but am I just getting better at executing the things I already know how to do? Or am I getting better because I'm expanding on my capacity as a player? If you ask yourself that very simple question, you're going to get a very honest answer. And then from there, the choice is yours. All right, guys, I appreciate it. You guys let me know what you guys think, what part resonated with you, and I will catch you guys next time.